Wominjeka everyone, Wominjeka meaning welcome. My name is Auntie Julianne and I'm an elder of the Wurundjeri Woi-wurrung people, and in recognition of doing my welcome to country, I'd like to pay my respects to my elders past, present, future and any elders that were here today, and I would also like to welcome you all here today. The Wurundjeri Woi-wurrung tribe consists of 3 families, the Nevins, the Terricks and the Wandins, and I'm part of the Nevin family. The 3 families all descend from one woman called Annie Bharat, which makes us one big family. Annie Bharat is the youngest sister of William Bharat, a pioneer for Aboriginal people in the 19th century, fighting for equality and land rights. I'm here today to welcome you all to the land of my ancestors. We call the land within our tribal boundaries our country. The Kulin Nation, Kulin meaning man, is made up of 5 groups. They are the Wurundjeri Woi-wurrung, Boonwurrung, Tanarong, Wathaurong and Dja Dja Wurrung. And to give you an outline of the Wurundjeri country and the area we cover. Wurundjeri country extends from north to the Great Dividing Range, east to Mount Baw Baw, south to the Moorabbin Creek and west to the Werribee River. We cover a diverse range of land from the mountains to the beach and everything in between. Many thousands of years ago, if an Aboriginal person from another tribe wanted to cross our boundary, they would have to sit at the boundary and wait for the Narragadah, which is the headman, or an elder to come past to give permission to cross. Traditional Aboriginal culture was highly territorial, and visitors risked a violent reprisal for crossing a tribal or clan boundary without this permission, and this is how a welcome to country originated in our culture. Traditionally, being welcomed onto country meant you respected Bunjil's law. Bunjil the wedge-tailed eagle is our creator, and Wah the crow is our protector. And as long as you looked after the country, you had access to our waterways and our land resources. And when you enter our country, we ask that you respect our resources, our fauna, flora and water, as they are very special to us. And when you are ready to leave, we ask that you leave it the way you found it.
Welcome to the Council meeting. I'm Councillor Piers Tyson, Mayor of Moonee Valley City Council. We aim to get started every second Tuesday at 6:30 p.m. However, sometimes there are some delays behind the scenes that we need to work through, and we appreciate your patience. You can have a look at our agenda online for all the issues that we'll be talking about tonight, and we look forward to seeing you soon. Thanks. So every second Tuesday we work through our council agenda, and what that means is working through things from procedural, day-to-day issues, financial reports, all the way up to the most important things in Moonee Valley, in Victoria or in Australia. And councillors can put up alternatives to that, can put up our staff officers' recommendation, and we can debate that and vote yes or no at the end of the day. Good evening and welcome to the Council meeting for the 11th of April 2023, which I now declare open. I'd like to extend a warm welcome to members of the public in the gallery who have joined us this evening, as well as those watching our live stream on the internet. As well as being live streamed, the video recording of this meeting will also be available on our website, so members of the gallery are advised that your presence may be recorded. I also ask that mobile phones be switched to silent during the meeting, and a general reminder to the public in the gallery that under Governance Rule 75.1, personal video and audio recording in the chamber of the meeting is not allowed. On behalf of Moonee Valley City Council, I respectfully acknowledge the traditional custodians of the land on which we meet, the Wurundjeri Woi-wurrung people of the Kulin Nation, and we pay respects to their spirits, ancestors, community members and elders, past, present and emerging. And we extend this respect to other Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander peoples that may be with us tonight. Item 2 on the agenda is apologies and leave of absence, and Councillor Sharp has put an apology for this evening. We have all other councillors with us, and noting that Councillor Byrne has joined us by Zoom. Welcome, Councillor Byrne. Item 3 is the confirmation of minutes, and councillors, can I please have a mover and seconder that the minutes from the council meeting held on Tuesday the 28th of March 2023 be confirmed. That's moved Councillor Sypek, seconded Councillor Bedio. I'll put that to the vote. All those in favour? And that's carried unanimously. Item 4 is declarations of conflict of interest. Does any councillor have a conflict of interest on any item on the agenda this evening? Councillor Byrne.
Thanks, Mayor. I'd like to declare a material conflict of interest in item 12.1 on the agenda for reasons previously disclosed to the CEO in writing.
Thank you, Councillor Byrne. Councillor Isa.
I'd like to declare a general conflict of interest for item 9.4, and written notice with reasons has been provided to the CEO in accordance with Governance Rule 2.2. Thanks.
Thank you, Councillor Isa, and I'll also declare a general conflict of interest on item 12.1 for reasons previously disclosed to the CEO. Any others? Item 5 is presentations. Councillors, do we have any presentations this evening? Item 6 is petitions and joint letters. Do we have any petitions or joint letters? Councillor Adams.
Thanks, Mayor. Council received a petition with signatures from 38 Moonee Valley residents rejecting the proposed name change of Lamart Street. The petition signed by residents of Lamart Street specifically rejects the proposed notion of changing the name of the southern end of Lamart Street to one of Council's choosing. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Adams, and in accordance with Governance Rule 62.4, I will refer that letter to the CEO for consideration. Do we have any other petitions or joint letters? Councillor Isa.
Thanks, Mayor. An online petition titled 2 Officers plus $2 million equals For Our Future, with 246 signatories, 58 from Moonee Valley, and a hard copy petition with 60 signatories, approximately 53 from Moonee Valley, was presented to Council. The petition calls for an investment in climate action opportunities in the 2023 to 24 Council budget to create a more sustainable municipality for all. It specifically calls for an allocation for 2 full-time climate officers, as well as $2 million community climate emissions reduction reserve. And Mayor, just to make sure that this petition conforms with our governance rules under clause 62.3.4, I'd just like to ask if we might be able to move a motion as an item of urgent business tonight under 62.1 to allow us to accept this petition.
Thank you, Councillor Isa, and that is that petitions or joint letters must include the names and email addresses of each petitioner. Thank you. We'll now are there any other petitions or joint letters? If not, we'll move on to item 7, public question time, and we have no questions. Apologies, members of the gallery. Questions need to be pre-submitted, so we aren't able to consider that tonight, but we can potentially consider that next meeting. Thank you. Item 8 is reports from delegates. Councillors, are there any reports from your responsibilities as delegates? If not, we'll move on to item 9, which is reports. And the first item on the agenda this evening is 9.1, Moonee Ponds Creek Naturalisation Scope and Cost Considerations. Councillors, do I have a motion? Councillor Adams.
Thanks, Mayor. I'd like to move the officer's recommendation with an amendment, please.
Yep. What is your amendment?
Amendment is an additional point C. Authorise the CEO to execute a funding agreement between Council and Melbourne Water for a fixed cost of $946,000, excluding GST in brackets, for delivery of the revised Moonee Ponds Creek Naturalisation Project.
Thank you, Councillor Adams. Are councillors aware of what's been moved? Thank you. Is there a seconder? Councillor Hodgson. Councillor Adams, would you like to speak to your motion?
Thanks, Mayor. At the council meeting on the 30th of November 2021, the Moonee Ponds Creek Naturalisation Project scope was provided to Council, which included an outline of costs. However, since this update, the design of the project has been further developed, including identifying the means to retain a mature tree near the shared path, and the design has been costed through quotes for construction. The proposed addition to the scope is a more complex shared pathway called a Kanga track, which is a raised boardwalk to protect a key mature tree and avoid removal of the tree or damage to its roots. Community members expressed an interest in keeping significant mature trees on site, and so this particular tree was flagged to be retained during discussions with community and through the design process. A Kanga track will allow for the tree to be retained and has the additional cost implication of $103,000. The tree it protects is estimated to be worth approximately $100,000. Another similar tree nearby was recently valued at $129,710. I'll also note that the $103,000 will be funded from the Open Space Reserve, and an in-principle commitment at this time will allow for officers to finalise a works agreement with Melbourne Water and begin paying for works with budget already allocated for this project in 2022/23. Further negotiations have agreed that the Moonee Valley contribution will be a fixed cost amount and no further contingency is required, as Melbourne Water will cover any future unanticipated costs. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Hodgson.
Thanks, Mayor. Thanks, Councillor Adams. That's pretty comprehensive comments, and I don't have much to add, just to say it's a really fantastic project. It's one that's certainly deserving of spending our Open Space Reserve, which is there for benefiting the community and our environment. And the Moonee Ponds Creek Naturalisation Project may take us a while to achieve in full, but any little parts that we can chip away at is an excellent way of using our funds, I think, and very happy to support this.
Thank you. Would any other councillor like to speak to the motion? Councillor Nation.
Thanks, Mayor. And look, I do appreciate the importance of this project and the importance of retaining this particular tree. I guess my frustration is that on this strip of path there was 15 trees. We're cutting 14 down and we're keeping one. Now, at the value, Councillor Adams, that you've put there, $100,000 per tree, or $129,710, that means we've lost about $1.5 million of assets by cutting down the other 14. So I don't know if the argument of we need to save it because the tree's worth $100,000 has much merit if we've cut down 14 in the process. What we probably should have done if we were engaged earlier is look at the trees in that strip. That parcel of land at Brosnan Crescent is quite wide, and the sheer nature of trees is they, particularly established trees like this, is they don't have the capacity to grow within a metre of each other or a metre and a half of each other because of the nutrients required for that tree to actually grow. So the trees that were cut down aren't as close that you couldn't have had a weaving shared path or some sort of path, maybe a longer Kanga track, to protect their roots or the actual trees. So that's one of my frustrations, is that we've cut down 14 and we're having a big song and dance because we're saving one and making a big deal about it, but we've cut down 14. The other one is that Melbourne Water have come to us with the request to redesign based on their consultation. So if this is their recommendation and it's a variation from the existing scope and design, then it would have been nice if they also contributed. We obviously are contributing to a lot of the assets on our side, but this is if this is a deviation from what we've originally agreed on, then not having open space reserve or ratepayers' money being used in this way, when I would have loved to have seen that $103,000 spent down at Nursery Corner to help realise that project. So while I will support this because the intent of the project, and it is a really impressive project, it just would have been great to know earlier in the piece that of the 15 trees that have been cut down, or that were going to be cut down for this shared path, that we're cutting down 14 and saving one. I would like to see quite a few more be saved. Thanks, Mayor.
Thanks, Councillor Nation. Would any other councillor like to speak? Councillor Isa.
Thanks, Mayor. Council Nation has raised important issues about retaining as many trees as we can in these projects. My understanding from the report, though, is that this particular tree has been identified as a particularly mature tree, although it's not on the significant tree register. It significantly more mature than the other trees that have been removed, and that its particular position has allowed it to be retained. My understanding also is that Melbourne Water has undertaken extensive community consultation across many years with respect to the path, and the community's been fantastic about responding to that, and this is, I think, the evidence and fruit of those consultations and that community interaction with Melbourne Water to identify a significantly mature tree that's worthy of retention in this way, and to find a way to do that. And I think the innovative way that's been put forward by Melbourne Water to respond to the community concerns and to retain this particular tree does obviously come at some infrastructure cost, but it's a cost that's of some equivalence to the value of the tree, to the environment and to the community. And I think that that this is actually a demonstration of the way these processes can work well. And I don't mind stumping up a little bit more money if it means the retention of a beautiful tree. I've got no issues with that, and I think that the proposal of the Kanga track looks like a really sound and lovely way of achieving that outcome. Thanks.
Thanks, Councillor Isa. Would any other councillor like to speak to the motion?
I'll just ask a point of clarification through the chair.
Yep.
In regards to the 14 trees that were cut down, is there a reference anywhere to their level of maturation, as has been referenced?
I can ask the CEO whether she feels herself or officers are in a position to respond.
Through the chair, sorry, we do not have the information at hand. Thank you.
Thanks.
So,
would you like to ask
a follow-up. So are we, through you, the chair, are we certain that the 14 trees weren't of a similar value or a similar level of maturation, and value can be also related to if they're natives or rare natives? Are we aware of that, or were the trees already cut down before any of those studies took place?
I would suspect it would be the same answer from the CEO.
Thank you, through the chair. That's correct. We can certainly follow up, but we don't have the information now.
Thank you. Thanks, Mayor.
Thanks. Was there anything else, Councillor Nation? Thank you. Would any other councillor like to speak? If not, I'll put that to the vote. All those in favour? And that is carried unanimously. Item 9.2 is Community Consultation Report on Jering Flemington Hub Operational Model. Councillors, do I have a motion? Councillor Isa.
Mayor, I'd like to move an alternative motion that's found on page 8 of the further information pack, and that reads that Council resolves to note the results of the community consultation and that these are limited in scope. B, endorse an operational model for the Jering Flemington Hub that ensures, 1, the needs of priority users, including previous users of the Flemington Community Centre, are first met in line with the draft Community Facilities Management Policy through targeted communications, and 2, the implementation of the Community Facilities Management Policy for the management of bookings. C, review operations and services of the Jering Flemington Hub after 6 months, inclusive of utilisation levels, community perception and financial sustainability, to inform any further decisions regarding the operations and financial planning of the hub, with a report to Council by February 2024. D, request the CEO to establish a community use advisory group to provide ongoing feedback from users and stakeholders about the operations and services of the Jering Flemington Hub, with terms of reference to come to Council for endorsement by June 2023. E, request the CEO to include the community and subsidised fees and charges in information connected with bookings, including the expression of interest processes currently underway.
Thank you, Councillor Isa. Council is aware of what's been moved, and Councillor Byrne, I might see yourself online. You're aware? Thank you. Is there a seconder? Councillor Hodgson. Councillor Isa.
Thanks, Mayor. Look, it's really exciting that the new building in Flemington is going to be opening soon. It's been wonderful to watch it progress over the last few months. And it's really important that we make sure the facility is accessible and well used by the community, particularly the local Flemington community. Really appreciate the work that's been done to try to consult with the community, but it's a complex issue of management and competing interests, and I just had some concerns about the way some of that consultation was perhaps interpreted. The principles of fairness and equity and accessibility and inclusion are what this new space embodies, and it's really important to me that we get right the booking and operations process in a way that really embed these principles. So these are the principles in our Community Facilities Management Policy, and so it's the application of this policy to this facility that I think gives us the best opportunity of meeting the community aspirations and expectations with respect to inclusion and accessibility and equity. So the motion that I've moved seeks the application of the Community Facilities Management Policy to the facility, as it is applied to all of our community facilities, and to open this process to assess the community needs before contemplating any alternative modelling that might move away from this particular prioritisation of community use. And the last point of the motion is to make sure that all potential users are able to respond to the expression of interest processes, and that these don't present any unintended barriers, by making sure that all of the different levels of fees and charges are outlined in that information that's made available. So I'll just leave it there for the moment. Thanks.
Thank you, Councillor Isa. Councillor Hodgson.
Thanks, Mayor. And look, I agree with Councillor Isa. This is a really exciting moment where we get to start imagining what it will be like when the hub is brought to life by all of the people wanting to use the space. And it's a fantastic space that's more than double the size of the original centre, but we know that the original community centre didn't meet the needs of the community down in Flemington. So it's, I'm fully supportive of a period of time where we can operationalise the hub, make sure that everyone who was using the Flemington Community Centre would have wanted to use the Flemington Community Centre, and, you know, the broader 20-minute neighbourhood that we want to now have access to the Flemington Community Hub have that opportunity to have access to booking facilities and using the bookable spaces, and really enlivening what we see the Jering Flemington hub as being, which is a place for social cohesion and a real hub of the community. So very happy to support all this, including the point D with an advisory group being put together, just to make sure that all of those targeted community and members of the community down in Flemington and surrounds have all of the support that they need to make sure that we're maximising the use of the space. Thanks.
Thank you, Councillor Hodgson. Would any other councillor like to speak to the motion? If not, I'll put that to the vote. All those in favour? And that is Councillor Adams, Councillor Bedio, Councillor Hodgson, Councillor Isa, Councillor Nation, Sypek and Tyson. All those against? Councillor Byrne, and I declare that motion carried. We now move on to item 9.3, which is award of contract number 203051, provision of cleaning, sanitary and hygiene services for council buildings. Councillors, do I have a motion? Councillors, do I have a motion? Councillor Isa.
Sorry, I move the officer's recommendation. Thanks, Mayor.
Thank you. And a seconder? Councillor Bedio. Councillor Isa, would you like to speak to the motion?
This is a rather large contract, but a really important one, because it's about keeping all of our community halls, all of our kindergartens, our civic facilities, our public toilets clean and hygienic for the use of all users. It's also about replacing pet waste bags in 82 parks locations around the municipality. So it's a contract that provides for a lot of services that people actually write to us a lot about, particularly the cleanliness of the public toilets, particularly in Pratt Street and in Pridham Plaza. I get a lot of emails about that, and also get a lot of emails about waste bags at dog parks. So there has been a lot of interest in this particular tender, and a lot of thought gone into the results by officers to make sure that we're appointing the best candidate, best tenderer for this very large and important contract. I guess there are a couple of things about the implementation of the contract that I'm really keen to keep a watch on, and I note that I've just got to check, sorry Mayor, that this is in the public section, just what I was about to say, sorry. Oh yes, it is at 8.1. I note that the contractor is required to provide a monthly report stating cleaning products, quantities and any recommendations of better products available as part of their sustainable practices. And I am keen to I guess keep a watching brief on the sustainability practices and the information that we get over this lengthy 5-year period. And I'm also keen to keep a watch on how we go with keeping the public toilets clean. Thanks.
Thank you, Councillor Isa. Councillor Bedio.
Nothing further to add, Mayor. Very well summarised by Councillor Isa.
Thank you. Would any other councillor like to speak on this motion? If not, I will put that to the vote. All those in favour? And that is Councillor Adams, Councillor Bedio, Councillor Byrne, Councillor Hodgson, Councillor Isa, Councillor Sypek, Councillor Tyson. All those against? Councillor Nation. And I declare that carried. We now move on to item 9.4, response to notice of motion number 2023/01, expansion of the electric vehicle charging program across Moonee Valley. And I note that Councillor Isa has declared a conflict of interest and is leaving the room. Councillors, do I have a motion? Councillor Sypek.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. I'd like to move the officer's recommendation, and that is that Council resolve to A, note the positive community and environmental benefits achieved following the installation...
Sorry, Councillor Sypek, it was just coming up on the screen. Please continue. Apologies.
Okay. the council resolved to A, note the positive community environmental benefits achieved following the installation of the electric vehicle charging station at 66 to 68 The Parade, Ascot Vale, and B, to authorise officers to commence a publicly advertised expression of interest process to determine the feasibility of expanding the cost-neutral electric vehicle charging network across Moonee Valley and inform councillors of the outcome.
Thank you, Councillor Sypek, and I note for governance there's a full stop missing on the end of B. Thank you, Councillor Sypek. Is there a seconder? Councillor Hodgson. Councillor Sypek, would you like to speak to the motion?
Yes, thank you, Mr Mayor. I brought this up as a notice of motion, I think it's about a month and a half ago, and I'm glad to see this report has come back to council. Charging stations are the future of transportation, I think not only just in Moonee Valley but throughout the whole world. If you remember back, well, no one can probably remember back then when cars were first introduced and petrol stations were popping up all over the place. And I think the infrastructure support has to now happen as electric vehicles become more and more popular, there needs to become more and more charging stations. And just some of the thoughts that I originally had when I brought this up is the perfect spots would be like leisure centres, like the East Kill Leisure Centre, the Ascot Vale Leisure Centre, where people will go there for an hour or two, do their gym work, go for a swim, and they can charge their car there while they're there. Sporting facilities, when they go and watch local football, local hockey, bowls, tennis club, whatever, that's a perfect place to have a charging station there. And shopping precincts. And I'm not only just talking, the big ones like High Point and Keilor Road, but even the small strip shopping centres where, like Centreway and Dinah Parade, and maybe even Union Road would be a good place where people will go shopping, have a cup of coffee, meet friends, stay there for an hour or two, and they can charge their cars. So I think this is the way we should be looking at things, and we should be on the forefront, and we should be one of the leading councils to evolve this charging facilities throughout our municipality. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Sypek. Councillor Hodgson.
Thanks, Mayor. Thanks, Councillor Sypek. I think you're spot on. There are a lot of residents in Moonee Valley who don't have driveways and can't charge at home, and all of those places that you've mentioned are really ideal candidates for places where people will spend a bit of time and be able to charge up their car. I think the report is a really interesting one. It highlights just how well the electric vehicle charging station down at the Parade has been going. It's by and large being used exactly as intended, so no abuse of the system down there, and I think it would be great if we're able to roll it out across more and more council-owned land. Thanks.
Thank you, Councillor Hodgson. Would any other councillor like to speak on this motion? Councillor Bedio.
Thanks, Mayor, through you. Look, I'm happy to support this motion. I think as governments we need to turn our minds to the eventuality of petrol and diesel cars fading out and the predominance of electric cars being the standard. Currently we're not equipped to deal with that on a number of fronts. We're probably going to have to look at planning scheme amendments for apartments to ensure that apartment buildings are capable of having electric vehicle charging. My only concern is I feel, and I think it's good that we're taking the lead here, but in reality we don't have any way other than to charge for the use of the charger to tax vehicles. That's state. The state obviously runs Vic Roads, or privatised now, I guess. But the state currently collects the zero and low emission vehicles charge for registered electric cars, and that's a certain amount of cents per kilometre. I would really hope to see that the state government or the federal government starts taking a little bit more of a lead in this, considering it is something that is going to happen sooner rather than later. It's something that we need some direction for. It's also not something that we can run bespoke to any other council. If you can imagine going from one council to the other, and it's a different set of rules as to how you charge your electric vehicle, it needs to be uniform. So I would encourage the state and federal to work with councils around setting some standard practice around this. Nevertheless, I congratulate Councillor Sypek on putting this forward. I think, it just shows how much local government does in terms of leading the way in these sort of things, but we really need some further direction from above. And in reality, it's the state government that's collecting money from these road users, and that money should be directed into the infrastructure that's going to be needed to make electric cars a reality in the mainstream. So thanks. Happy to support.
Thanks, Councillor Bedio. Would any other councillor like to speak? Councillor Nation.
Thanks, Mayor. So look, I'm happy to support this motion. There's a few things that I'd note. We obviously in point B are expressing that we are only looking for cost-neutral vehicle charging networks, which is fine now because the rollout with that first one on the parade, the EV one, was under the federal government's ARENA Future Fuels Fund. I think in 2020, the federal government put a substantial amount of money into, well, not substantial, 250 million, it's compared to submarines, not substantial at all, into looking at rolling out or assisting councils and a number of operators installing these charging stations. So at the moment, we're able to do this cost neutrally because someone like EV Networks is funded through the government to come in, install them. All we have to do is supply the land, and I take it we charge rent for that as well because it wouldn't be cost neutral otherwise, noting that every piece of our city has some sort of value attributed to it. So the issue will become if that ARENA Future Fuels Fund dries up, or if we're not one of the target regions, I think there's 8 at the moment, then our ability to actually deliver cost-neutral electric charging vehicle networks would not exist. So I think we just need to acknowledge that if we are going down this path and looking at council rolling out EV infrastructure, that the cost neutrality of it might not be something we can achieve if that funding from the federal government dries up. The other point I want to raise, and the report obviously discusses those parking bays at the parade and the amount of the carbon dioxide equivalent that was saved using green power and reducing emissions from internal combustion engine vehicles. I would again stress that the most environmentally friendly way of moving people is mass transit. It is not 2 or 3 or 4 people sitting in one vehicle. So while it's important that we suggest EVs are better than internal combustion engine vehicles, they're better if they're replacing a vehicle that you already have and you need, not if you already have 2 cars and you go out and buy an EV. That's actually worse for the environment. So that educational piece for us to continue pushing mass transit and active transport as the pinnacle of what we want to achieve in terms of reducing the environmental impact, and then EV better than petrol vehicles, I think is really important. Because if everyone who already has vehicles goes out and buys an EV today, it's going to be horrendous for the environment.
Your time has expired.
That's fine. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Nation. Would any other councillor like to speak on this motion? If not, I will put that to the vote. All those in favour? And that's carried unanimously. We now move on to item 9.5 and we'll welcome Councillor Isa back into the room. Welcome back, Councillor Isa. Item 9.5 is response to notice of motion number 2023/08, Moonee Valley Festival Review. Councillors, do I have a motion? Councillor Sypek.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. that Council resolve to endorse an event program for 2023/24 that consists of A Christmas Carol event in Queen's Park, December 2023, the return of the flagship, the Moonee Valley Festival event in Queen's Park in February 2024, and one small local event in another part of the municipality in March 2024. B. Allocate 660,000 GST exclusive in the draft 2023-24 budget to deliver the point subject to 2023-2024 budget process. C. Note that the recommendation of the 2022 events review and request that the CEO to commence the development of an events program framework to strategically guide the production of events and festivals for 2024-25 and beyond.
Thank you, Councillor Sypek, and I can just confirm with you that what you've read out is what's on the screen and the officer's recommendation.
Correct.
Thank you. All right, I will ask if there's a seconder. Councillor Hodgson. Councillor Sypek.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. This has been a community request, and it's been a groundswell from the community. Everyone has missed the Moonee Valley Festival. It's an iconic event that we've had here. We've had it for 41 years. And a young man, Frank de Blasi, many years ago, requested this festival. And he started an absolute legacy here. And we got, this council got rid of it a few years back. I think it was the biggest mistake we ever made. But you know what? We make mistakes. We've realised we've made a mistake and we're now bringing it back. And I hope that my colleagues will be able to support me to bring back this flagship, iconic event that Moonee Valley is known for throughout the whole of Victoria. Not only do we have our own community come here, we have people from all over Victoria come to the Moonee Valley Festival. And everyone's been asking why. Why haven't we got the Moonee Valley Festival? Well, it's returning now.
Thank you, Councillor Sypek. Councillor Hodgson.
Thanks, Mayor. Thanks, Councillor Sypek, for facilitating this one. And I think, you know, the report's a really interesting one. It shows how we've made some attempts over the last few years to cut and dice the events budget a little bit differently and try a few different festivals and events. But as Councillor Sypek says, people do keep asking about the Moonee Valley Festival, and the memory of that event is still strong out there in the community. It's still much beloved. And I think it's time for us to bring it back into the program. And the officers have done a great job of giving us a few different options of combinations. We had the carols last year, which was obviously another raging success. And we've had over the past couple of years some really great smaller events around the municipality. So I'm glad to see that we're able to still capture a lot of what did work when we, you know, tried a bit of a rotating things, but also give the people what they want and bring back the Moonee Valley Festival.
Thank you, Councillor Hodgson. Would any other councillor like to speak on this motion? Councillor Isa.
Mayor, I'd like to move an amendment to the motion, please.
What is your amendment?
As circulated and as I think is, as circulated just moments ago, which is not quite what's on the screen, I'll just read it. So to change point 3 to read, one small local event in Rosehill Ward and one medium local event in Buckley Ward in March 2024, subject to the 2023/24 budget process. Change B to allocate...
Sorry, Councillor Isa, I might just ask you to read that again for governance, just to double check.
One small local event in Rosehill Ward and one medium local event in Buckley Ward in March 2024, subject to the 23/24 budget process.
Governance, it was read out as and one medium local event.
One medium local event, that's right.
In Buckley Ward. Yep. Please continue, Councillor Isa.
B, allocate $830,000 and then rest as previously moved.
Yep.
And then C, an additional phrase at the end, excuse me, that reads and includes an events policy for the management of community and other appropriate commercial events with demonstrable community benefit held on suitable council-owned land. And then in brackets, per council resolution minute number, that should be 2021/121.
Yep.
And then an additional point D that reads, request the CEO to bring an events policy to council before September 2023 to allow consultation and endorsement of the policy prior to its implementation by January 2024.
Thank you, Councillor Isa. Can I ask that councillors are familiar with the amendment that's been moved? Councillor Byrne. Thank you. Is there a seconder for the amendment? Councillor Bedio. Councillor Isa.
Thanks, Mayor. Just speaking specifically to the amendment, the original motion included provision for one local event to be held in alternating across Rosehill Ward and Buckley Ward. So only one of those wards having a local event in 2024. And this amendment includes, and that was a small local event, it only included funding for one small local event. This amendment includes an event in both Buckley Ward and Rosehill Ward in March 2024, and I had been advised that the Buckley Ward, the Lincoln Park, what we've had as the Lincoln Park event is actually a medium event and would require additional funding that's then included in that point B to bring that up to a total of $830,000. And I think those events, so it is a bit weather dependent and a bit dependent on other factors, but they have been really well received across the past couple of years. Point C, the inclusion in point C is, I guess, to speed up the process of getting this events policy in place. It was something that Councillor Bedio and myself really worked hard on bringing to the chamber in June 2021. And I guess we've both, speaking for myself, I've been, and I think it's a shared feeling of some frustration that we haven't made progress on this, particularly when we've looked around and seen that other councils have the sorts of events policies in place that we'd really like to see here in Moonee Valley. And we don't have to reinvent the wheel each time. We can borrow and learn from our neighbouring councils who do it really well and have tried things out. And so I guess we'd really like to see this events policy come to the chamber before the next election, and we'd like it to come with some time for it to be implemented next year. So the inclusion in point C and the addition of point D are to that end. Thanks.
Thank you, Councillor Isa. Councillor Bedio.
Thank you, Mayor, through you, and thank you, Councillor Isa, for moving this amendment. I'm particularly supportive of points C and D. It was something that I brought up very early in the piece when I was elected. I think it was my second meeting in. I put a notice of motion forward to support or try to encourage more music festivals, more live entertainment in the municipality. Something that was flagged very early on, though, was the lack of ability for commercial or private operators to operate events on council land. It's actually quite rare for a metropolitan council to not have that facility. Currently, we have community event permits that are available. They're generally for much smaller community events and not the kind of commercial events that you would see, for example, in Catani Gardens in St Kilda in the city of Port Phillip. And obviously it's something that I'm very supportive of, trying to bring more culture and the like into the city. So it's a really important piece, and it's something that I really hope colleagues will support. seeking external investment from operators to run their events in Moonee Valley to make Moonee Valley more attractive for tourism, which also has flow-on effects to support local businesses here as well. Something I'm really passionate about, and I really hope this one gets up. And this will obviously work in cohesion with the Arts and Culture Plan that our officers have worked really hard on. But I agree with Councillor Iser, it's something that we've flagged for quite some time. I believe that this is something that we could implement, and in fact, officers have agreed that it's something that we could implement quite quickly, given that other councils have the same policy that they have operated and used for quite some time and quite successfully. To use your words, Councillor Iser, we don't have to reinvent the wheel here. So I really hope that officers can move on this one really quickly. It is really important, and I think that the sooner we act on it, the sooner we'll see the net community benefits that these events can bring into our city. So thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Bedio. Would any other councillor like to speak to the amendment? Councillor Byrne.
Thanks, Mayor. Could I please ask a point of clarification?
What's your point of clarification?
What level of event the previous Mediterranean Fiesta held at the Centreway is classified as?
I'll ask the CEO whether herself or an officer is in a position to respond.
Probably need the Director Service Delivery to respond through the Mayor.
Thank you. Through you, Mayor. The small event that was put in the council officer report was based on the recent Centreway event, which is a small event.
Thank you.
I'm not sure about the previous Mediterranean event. I'll have to get back to councillors on that.
Thank you, Director Harries. Councillor Byrne, did you hear all of that from Director Harries? Does that answer your question?
Yes.
Thank you. Would you like to speak to the amendment?
I will. Look, I thank you for the amendment, Councillor Iser. I'm just a little bit concerned. First of all, I'm glad that both Rosehill and Buckley Ward get mentioned, because I think that if we were to take away the Lincoln Park Festival and the Centreway Festival, the community would be rightly outraged. And I can see why it's been put in here for it to be a small local event. But the most recent Centreway Festival, unfortunately, as has been discussed in the chamber already, I believe, it didn't go according to plan. It wasn't, unfortunately, it didn't quite work, and it wasn't the Mediterranean Fiesta. If we're going to have one, I would like us to do it properly. And I don't know whether we just need to put, one small or medium local event in Rosehill Ward and then allocate and then change the numbers in a further amendment, just to make sure that we're covered. Because I also see that, in Rosehill Ward, from someone from there, there's a significant amount of disadvantage up in our ward, and people like to make sure that everyone's getting everything fairly. And what they'll see here is a massive event in Murnon Ward, a medium event in Buckley Ward, and then scraps given to Rosehill. And there'll probably be a few people who'll be disappointed with that, and I would be one as well. So whilst I'll support this amendment because I think that it definitely improves it from where it was, I'll flag a further amendment. I'm not exactly sure how that will look at this point, if this gets up. Thanks.
Thank you, Councillor Bird. Would any other councillor like to speak to the amendment? Councillor Sypek.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Look, I moved the original motion, and I think these amendments are actually quite good amendments. Lincoln Park does serve a purpose as well. It does draw a crowd as well, which is really, really good. And like Councillor Byrne said, the Mediterranean Festival, even though it's not as big as the other two, but we actually draw quite a really good crowd up there. And I think people enjoy the Mediterranean Festival up there because when it was running at full speed, they had competitions like who had the best pesto and and we had to do judging there, and who grew the biggest home tomato. It was a really fun event, and I think people enjoy that, and they don't mind going out for the day to these festivals. But Councillor Byrne does have a point. It does look like the Murnong's going to get the big Queen's Park one, Lincoln gets a medium, and the Mediterranean becomes a small. So we should look at sort of advertising and making sure that the Mediterranean Festival gets as much airplay as the other two. So I think it's just a matter of making sure that we market it properly, and we make sure that all the traders and all the community know about these festivals. So I think it'll create its own success. That's what I'm thinking. It'll create its own success.
Thanks, Councillor Sypek. Would any other councillor like to speak to the amendment? Councillor Nation.
Thanks, Mayor. Look, I share Councillor Byrne's sentiments in regards to the amendment potentially limiting the scope of what can be delivered in 2023. In 2024, March 2024 in Rosehill Ward, particularly if we did go down that avenue of wanting to bring back the Mediterranean Festa, or a version of that Festa, whether or not the amendment which references it as small would then make it challenging to do on that budget outlined within the report, which I think is about $85,000 for a small event. So, Councillor Byrne, I would definitely entertain changing that reference, as you may have alluded to. My other concern with the Buckley Ward event is, it's from my understanding at the moment, we're pushing that top level of expenditure with the Lincoln Twilight concert. It tends to grow and grow each year. So with this particular event, I would hate for that medium reference, which in the report is referenced as 170, to then limit the scope of what we can deliver in March 2024. Noting we bill it as a local and metropolitan event, and a lot of the branding that we put out, one of the things that probably was missing this year was spending that, maybe extra $50,000 or $60,000 to get a real, one flagship act to close the night. Now, looking at that reference in the amendment, it would pretty much just be rolling out the Twilight Festival as we did this year. There is the limitations within that table, within the report, that just goes small, medium, or, flagship, Illuminate the River, 85, 170 and 1.2 million. So I'll wait to see what Councillor Byrne does in terms of a further amendment, but I would like to consider that as being what we could deem a large event to that extent. I just don't want us to not continue to build off the really good community sentiment with that event. Noting that putting more money into the Lincoln Park Festival would still be less than we spent on the Mopo sessions, which cost us over $100 per head of people that turned up. So, yes, I hopefully we can further tweak this through further amendments. Thanks, Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Nation. Would any other councillor like to speak to the amendment? If not, I will put that to the vote. All those in favour? And that's carried unanimously, and that amendment now forms part of the substantive motion. When we return to the substantive motion, Councillor Sypek has moved and Councillor Hodgson has seconded. Would any other councillor like to speak to the substantive? Councillor Byrne.
Mayor, I was wondering if I could move a 5-minute adjournment, please, to get some wording together.
I'm happy to call a 5-minute adjournment without you moving it. Is it to form the words for an amendment?
Yes, as
Yep.
discussed.
Yep, thank you, Councillor Byrne. I will call a 5-minute adjournment till 7:35 when we return. Thanks. and welcome back to the council meeting discussing the response to notice of motion number 2023/08, Moonee Valley Festival Review. An amendment has passed, and Councillor Byrne, you have the call.
Thanks. Yes, I'd like to move an amendment to the current motion. So under A3, where it says one small local event, to change it to one small to medium local event. And then under B, where it says allocate 830,000, change that to allocate 860,000. And for the rest to remain as is. Thank you, Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Byrne. Is there a seconder? Councillor Sypek, as mover of the original motion, can't second an amendment. Councillor Bedio.
Yeah, that's okay, because
For councillors' clarification, Councillor Sypek moved the original motion, Councillor Hodgson seconded. Councillor Bedio seconds. Councillor Byrne, would you like to speak to your amendment?
Thanks, Mayor. I will, and thank you, Councillor Sypek, for trying to second it, and Councillor Bedio for stepping in. Really appreciate that. We obviously had a little bit of a discussion in that break, and I thank the audience for sticking with us through that just while we can fine-tune some of this. So where I think that we've landed, which was seen somewhat fair and reasonable, is because we probably have the intention of the Rosehill Ward event remaining at the Centreway, but also noting that there are capacity issues at the Centreway, and we can't necessarily have something quite as big as, for instance, Queen's Park, obviously. A small to medium sort of will cover, hopefully, capacity of Centreway. So still get the Centreway pumping, still getting it, giving it some love like it should. And then we've allocated, after receiving advice, that an extra $30,000 on top of the 830 should be adequate enough to put on the event. Not necessarily similar to how it was, but to the same level that it was previously. Now, I've left this just to the Rosehill Ward event. My understanding is that there will potentially be another amendment in regards to Buckley Ward. But I hope that councillors can see merit in why this needs to occur. I believe most councillors would have been to the Centreway, and I think a lot of councillors went to the event last year. Not as many went this year. I don't know how many councillors have been to the Mediterranean Festival, but they really were fantastic, and it's been great. And it would be great to see something in that sort of form, even better in sort of a bit of a 2024 mould, come back, and hopefully by increasing the budget and scope that all out to do so. So thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Byrne. Councillor Bedio.
Not much further to add. Obviously, happy to support ward councillors in implementing further events in their wards. I think the more the merrier from my end, so happy to support this one.
Thank you, Councillor Bedio. Would any other councillor like to speak on the amendment? If not, I'll put that to the vote. All those in favour? And that's carried unanimously. That now forms the substantive motion, and would any councillor like to speak? Councillor Nation.
Could I please move an amendment?
What's your amendment?
That in A3 we delete the words one medium halfway down. So we delete the words one medium local event in Buckley Ward, and we replace those words with the the annual Lincoln Park Twilight event, open brackets, to be considered as a medium to large event, comma, approximately $250,000, comma, for the purposes of reading the report, close brackets, and then in point B, change 860 to, how is my maths, 940, please. Yes.
Thank you, Councillor Nation.
Thanks,
Governance, could I possibly ask that the original motion be included with a strike through, just so councillors can see what's proposed to be deleted and added?
Might be hard to do. If she does the undo, she's going to lose the entire thing. Do you want me to read out what's deleted again? Because it might be actually hard
That might be helpful.
to control Z that,
Councillor Nation.
because then you're going to lose the text if you undo it. So even if you copy it over, it's still not going to do it. The deletion was the words "and one medium event in Buckley Ward." Medium local event.
Medium
sorry.
local. Thank you. I'll ask if there's a seconder for the amendment. Councillor Adams. Councillor Nation, would you like to speak to the amendment?
Yeah, thanks, Mayor. So far we've heard tonight, in references to events in Buckley Ward, how well received the Lincoln Twilight concert is. And therefore what this amendment seeks to do is, rather than specifying one medium local event in Buckley Ward, which by sheer virtue of not naming could give that direction to officers that we're looking at doing something different. So to really ensure that we retain the Lincoln Park event, that we actually just name it. If it's what we want to do in March 2024, if we want to keep the annual event, then I'm more comfortable with it being named in this motion, so there is no scope for another event to come in and replace it, at least for March 2024. The second part in brackets is because in the report, where it does give definition to what is a small event and what is a medium event, and subsequently in the table in 4.2 in the report, the references small and medium also have financial implications, small being 85,000, medium being 170,000. The then next tier is a flagship event, which is considerably more. So the purposes of referencing what a medium to large event is, by referencing it as medium to large rather than medium, is wanting us to build on the success of what it is and actually continue to try to grow it. If it just said medium, it would be looking at keeping the status quo, and I think that that event has a lot of scope to get a feature act or to really continue to celebrate it as a local and metropolitan event, and then giving a quantum as well of what a medium to large event would be if it was to be added to that table in 4.2. And that number of 250,000, small's 85,000, additional medium, a medium event is 170,000, which is a difference of about 85,000. So that 250 again is almost 85,000 again. It's 80,000 again, but it's hopefully not just an arbitrary number because it follows the progression there in the report from small, medium and large. And then the other change, part B, is obviously making sure that should this amendment get up, that it's not detracting from the other events that have been proposed in the original motion and the subsequent carried amendment put by Councillor Byrne. So it's updating that extra 80,000 to Part B to make it 940,000. When you do consider How much we spent on events, part funded obviously last year. This is a decrease on the overall spend. So while 940 may seem like a large amount in the context of what we did last year, in the context of the overall budget, it is quite a small amount considering the goodwill that these events achieve and how positively our city gets spoken about and our events get spoken about, as we've heard around the chambers. I'll leave it at that, Mayor, and hopefully councillors are interested in supporting that amendment. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Nation. Councillor Adams.
Thanks, Mayor, and thank you, Councillor Nation, for moving that. The Lincoln Park event is a much-loved event that attracts really big numbers already, and our events team has done an excellent job in running this event and building it up to what it has become. So I really support having a bigger budget if that means that we can get some bigger acts and attract even more event goers, then fantastic. I fully support this. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Adams. Would any other councillor like to speak on the amendment? Councillor Hodgson.
Thanks, Mayor. Look, I'll be supporting the amendment. I just wanted to make the point and thank officers for accommodating our enthusiasm for expanding the events program, and I think hopefully the work that Councillor Byrne and Councillor Nation have just been doing to increase the budget is adequate for factoring in that, you know, the extra resources, and it does seem you know, generous enough to allow for the resources that are required to run the events. You know, we have had a pretty, last year being the exception, we've had a pretty skinny budget on events, and we've, you know, the previous council sensibly pivoted a lot of our events funding into COVID responsive grants, which at the time was what the community needed. What we see now is that what the community loves to do and loves to see is a chance to get together in a big outdoor setting and celebrate, you know, the community spirit. So I'm happy to see this, and yeah, thanks to officers for accommodating our whims.
Thank you, Councillor Hodgson. Would any other councillor like to speak to the amendment? If not, I'll put that to the vote. All those in favour? That's carried unanimously. We now return to the substantive motion, and I might ask governance if the red text can be removed now and the green highlighted text be... Thank you. Councillor Nation, was that a point of clarification?
Yes, point of clarification, Mayor. Just on the substantive, is there a bit over the page break?
Does the point carry over? I might ask governance, is there additional text on the following page from what's on the screen? Thank you. Maybe if councillors could be shown that briefly. That's perfect, thank you. Would any other councillors like to speak on the substantive motion? Councillor Nation.
Thanks, Mayor. I'd like to move a further amendment.
What's your amendment?
So, just trying to, at the end of point C, where I think there should be a full stop. Sorry, I've just written this.
Sorry, Councillor Nation. It's just been brought to my attention that clause 33.2 of our governance rules, any one councillor cannot move more than 2 amendments in succession.
I've only moved 1 amendment.
Move more than 2, that's correct. Thank you. Please continue.
Yep. So I'll just send that through to governance. So the additional text, which I'll send to councillors, sorry.
So that's at the end of point C?
End of point C, it's adding a sentence which will read, and I've just sent it through to governance, in the interim, until the events program framework is completed, run a cost-neutral trial program in 2023-24, allowing community and other appropriate commercial events with demonstrable community benefit to be held on suitable council-owned land.
Thank you, Councillor Nation, and I might give councillors and myself a minute or two to consider the amendment, as we have not seen this before.
No, doesn't the policy...
Policy is that point. It's the framework's the overarching. It's the policy is the specific thing that does the policy, permits and things. That's what we're trying to bring forward.
Okay, it should say policy.
Councillor Nation, have you misspoken?
I have, because I have said framework instead of policy, noting that in sentence 2 it says framework, and then line 2 it says framework, line 3 it says policy, so I've just cut and pasted the wrong name. So yes, framework should be policy. Thank you.
Should be policy. All references, Councillor Nation, to events program framework is events...
No, just in my amendment. So the amendment will read, in the interim, until the events policy is completed, run a cost-neutral trial program in 2023-24, allowing community and other appropriate commercial events with a, can't say the word, demonstrable community benefit to be held on suitable council-owned land.
So can I just clarify there, Councillor Nation, what's on the screen is in the interim until the events...
I actually can't see the green.
That's all right, I can read it out to you. It says in the interim until the events policy. Is that correct?
The framework's being completed, yes.
The events policy, yes.
Yes, yeah. Sorry,
Thank you, Councillor Nation. Is there a seconder? Councillor Bedio. Councillor Nation, would you like to speak to your amendment?
Yeah, thank you, Mayor. So what point this amendment in point C aims to do is obviously build off the intent of point C, which does outline that one of the limitations about having community and commercial events on council-owned land is the fact there's not a policy to guide it. Now, I appreciate this might be putting the cart before the horse, but I think that first line talking about 2022, we finally put together this framework. I think Councillor Bedio has been speaking about it since the inaugural meeting at the end of 2020. And my fear is that we have gone from an extremely extensive, externally funded events and festivals program last year, where we received unprecedented support from levels of government, which meant we could trial a whole range of events, some that went really well and some didn't, and that even with the amendments that have been moved this coming financial year, we're really thinning that out, and through amendments on the floor are really trying to save things that we really love. So the challenge in terms of limiting our events program is, well, why don't we, as per point C, look at going, we can have an expanded events program, we can deliver a total quantum of events over $1 million if we're not the ones paying for it, and if we get some really good operators in to run events on council land, because that still will achieve what we're trying to achieve, in that there'll be local events, it won't cost anything to council, and there's a whole range of groups that do fantastic events throughout Melbourne. My fear by not adding this amendment is that the events policy may take another 12 months, it might take another financial year, and subsequently that 2023-24 period when we really want to be building on events and festivals will be a real drop in that interest and what we can have delivered within our municipality. So if there's a trial program while we're putting together the events policy, you know what, it might even guide the events policy, but it just will hopefully provide more options for some really good events to be considered and then maybe held throughout our city, and take away the barriers of community groups or even commercial operators, events operators, from tying in events with Midsummer or whatever the event might be at Queen's Park or down at one of our parks in Rosehill or Buckley Ward. So I hope my rambling has captured the benefit that I think this amendment will have, and that I don't think it complicates the preceding text in point C, and that it doesn't complicate the framework and the policy. Thanks, Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Nation. Councillor Bedio, would you like to speak?
Thanks, Mayor. Look, I'm very supportive of this, as I think it's obvious this is something that I'm really passionate about, and the faster we can move on this, the better. And I actually think that in many ways, running a trial, to some extent it's a trial in the interim, will actually better inform officers in developing the substantive policy that's due for implementation next year according to the substantive motion. And I think this is really exciting. I think the reality is we are restricted in budget in terms of what we can deliver. I'm sure us as councillors all around the chamber here would like to deliver as many events as possible, but it's just not within our remit. And it's something we can't afford. But if we open ourselves up to external operators, then there's no reason why we can't have great festivals here all the time. And it's something that we can potentially become known for. So I think this is really exciting, and I thank you, Councillor Nation, for bringing this forward. It's probably something I wasn't thinking of coming into this, but I'm definitely happy to support as it's come up now. So, yeah, great. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Bedio. Would any other councillor like to speak? Councillor Hodgson.
Thanks, Mayor. Thanks, Councillor Nation. Look, I'm very supportive of the intent in this, and I, as explained, I'm not totally sure that I think my interpretation of it, I suppose, is that it allows officers to be open to proposals that may come in the interim. Given that the interim, like that point D, asks for the events policy to come before September and be implemented by January, and that festival season is sort of more in the warmer months, I'm not sure that there will be that many, and that officers, mightn't spend a lot of valuable time actively promoting a trial program during this period. But I'm happy to have the intent there that officers can be open to any opportunities that come forward. So if that is the intent, then I'm happy to support this addition.
Thank you, Councillor Hodgson. Would any other councillor like to speak on the amendment? Councillor Byrne.
Thanks, Mayor, and thanks, Councillor Nation, for moving this. What really comes to mind for me with this is what's going to happen with the new sound show at the Centreway. I feel like we're talking about the Centreway a lot. We've obviously got other really good areas to be activated across the municipality, but there is an investment going in there at the moment, which is going to be quite a game changer for the local area. And how good would it be to have locals or whoever or businesses say, we really want to have our own band here, we really want to showcase our singers, or we really want to run a festival here, and then we don't need to pay for anything. We can have someone run Wednesday night movie nights for 10 weeks within the Centreway over summer, and everyone just gets into the habit of coming to the Centreway every week or whatnot. Or I just feel like there can be so many creative ideas that could come from this, and yes, it might not be the right timing in terms of there might not be enough time for this to all come together, but it definitely might make a few people think and a few people get excited, and perhaps if the media pick up on this story, it might, get a few people putting in a bit of an EOI. So I think that it's a good thing. I think that it has lots of possibilities, and I'm looking forward to seeing what comes of it.
Thank you, Councillor Byrne. Would any other councillor like to speak on the amendment? If not, I will put that to the vote. All those in favour? That is Councillor Adams, Councillor Bedio, Councillor Byrne, Councillor Hodgson, Councillor Isa, Nation and SIPEC, and Councillor Tyson to vote against. I declare that amendment carried to form the part of the substantive motion. And we now return. Councillors SIPEC and Hodgson have spoken as movers and seconders. Would any other councillor like to speak to the motion? Councillor Nation.
Thanks, Mayor, and thank you to councillors for their support with that amendment. I think if you look at the time that we've spent on this one report, it hopefully gives the community a great reassurance that as a group of councillors and as an organisation, we really value our events and festivals. We value what we do really well, like the references to Mediterranean Festa and the Lincoln Park Twilight event, and we value what they bring and mean to our community. I think the notice of motion that Councillor SIPEC moved about the Moonee Valley Festival was probably one of the best received notice of motions that we've had. You know, even as a council, we were out there putting out press releases talking about how good it could be to bring it back to the Moonee Valley Festival to Moonee Ponds to Queen's Park. And that sentiment is shared throughout the municipality. I don't know there's too many people that I've spoken to since that notice of motion that have said, no, you shouldn't do that, it's a waste of time, it's a waste of money, etc. Because one of the real benefits about the Moonee Valley Festival is that it's open to everyone to attend for free, but also that you get your scouts doing demonstrations and Halls Taekwondo and the Rotary Club and charities running fundraisers, and it's just a real coming together of the community that you probably don't get at any other single event in our city, because it's the bringing together of the city of Moonee Valley. In terms of that point C, and I thank councillors for their support. And I do note, look, Part D does have some dates which are hopefully not aspirational, but sometimes there are challenges to get reports or policies implemented by certain dates, just by sheer nature of the volume of work that's required. So at least the amendment, I guess, ensures that we're in a holding pattern in terms of running events. And one thing that mightn't jump out, but Councillor Byrne brought up a really good point. Most bands operate with an ABN. They try to derive an income for the artists and therefore need to be registered as a sole trader partnership with an ABN. And I had someone in a band come to me and say, oh, could we just hire out the sound shell? Now, they're technically a commercial operator because they have an ABN, and there was either very limited or no capacity to do that. This may present that opportunity. That a band can go down and jam at the sound shell as long as it's going to be cost neutral. And I think that's fantastic.
Councillor Nation,
that's great for our city. Thanks, man.
Thank you. Would any other councillor like to speak? Councillor Byrne.
Thanks, Mayor. And we've obviously spoken about a lot of our smaller festivals, but I want to make sure that I touch on the fact how exciting it is that the Moonee Valley Festival is coming back. I think that it was a little bit tired when it got changed, but I think that our events team have grown, and I think that the way we view events is very different. And I'm sure that when it comes back, it will come back with an absolute blast. I am mindful, we only spend 0.5% of our yearly budget on events. It's not like we spend a lot in the scheme of things of what our actual council budget is. It's quite a tiny amount. So I'm hoping that ratepayers and everyone in the municipality can see the value in these events and hopefully come down to them. But I also want to touch on Illuminate the River because we're obviously scrapping that. Illuminate had all the potential, but unfortunately we probably couldn't have had worse weather for the few times that we tried it. And we couldn't quite get it going and it never quite caught on, and that's obviously really disappointing. And I don't think it was necessarily anybody's fault except for maybe the weather gods. But I think that it's exciting that we are still continuing with our run of slightly different festivals, and it's something for the whole community to look forward to. I'm mindful that there's a lot of whispering going on in the background between governments and the mayor and one of the directors. I'm not sure if I'm missing out on something there, Mayor.
No, please continue, Councillor Byrne.
Oh, okay, no, that's fine. I'll leave it there. Thanks, and thanks, Councillor Sypek, for the motion.
Thank you. I might call a 3-minute adjournment till 8:15, and we'll be back shortly. and welcome back from another adjournment. The report is the Moonee Valley Festival Review. There have been several amendments moved and passed, and speakers to the substantive motion are Councillors Sypek, Byrne, Nation and Hodgson, and I'll ask if any other councillors would like to speak. Councillor Bedio.
Thanks, Mayor. Through you, I'd like to move an amendment. I'd like to add a wording in point C to add in the two instances where it says suitable council-owned land to say suitable council-owned or controlled land.
And I believe for the benefit of governance, you said that there was two instances of that. I can see that on the fourth line of C.
Yep.
Council-owned or controlled land. Thank you. Probably a couple of commas to fix there as well. Thank you. Governance. And is there a seconder for that amendment? Councillor Adams. Councillor Bedio, would you like to speak to your amendment?
Thank you, Mayor. This is largely administrative. I suspect the intention was for the policy to apply across all of council land. As you're aware, not all open space in the municipality is council-owned. Some of it is Crown-owned or state-owned and under the control of council. So this wording just ensures that all land within our jurisdiction will be able to, this policy will apply to all of that land. So, thanks.
Thank you, Councillor Bedio. Would any other councillors like to speak to this amendment? If not, I will put that to the vote. All those in favour? And that amendment is carried unanimously. We now return to the substantive motion. Would any councillor like to speak? Councillor Bedio.
I just want to say how excited I am with that this potentially will get up tonight for a number of reasons, the Moonee Valley Festival. I must admit I've never been, but I'm very excited to go. Councillor Sypek has really brought it to my attention as something that I really need to do, so I'm very excited. Also excited for this Mediterranean Festival. Haven't been to that one yet, so I'm looking forward to going to that one as well. But obviously this is, in terms of the events permits and the commercial use of our open space, it's something that I've been championing for since I started on council. It's something that I think is really important for the community and will lead to significant community benefit. So I think this is probably one of my favourite motions ever, and I'm really excited, and I hope this one gets supported.
Thank you, Councillor Bedio. Would any other councillor like to speak? If not, I will put that to the vote. All those in favour? And that is carried unanimously. Yes. We now move to item 9.6, response to notice of motion 2021/40, airport noise overlay grants. Councillors, do I have a motion? Councillor Sypek.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. I'd like to move the officer's recommendation, and that is that Council resolve to note the content of this report and B, to receive a future report on a Council submission to the Aviation Green Paper.
Thank you, Councillor Sypek. Is there a seconder? Councillor Bedio. Councillor Sypek, would you like to speak to the motion?
Yes, thank you, Mr Mayor. And the reason why I brought this notice of motion up is when Melbourne Airport changed the airport overlay, that brought into a lot of homes in the Airport West area and Avondale Heights area into the airport overlay, which was going to increase the noise factor due to the third runway being built in the very, very near future. Now, most of these homes were not in the overlay, and when they built their homes, they didn't need double glazing or triple glazing. And now, they're now going to have a massive expense to have quiet and peace inside their homes when the jets roar past their houses on takeoff or coming into land. So I think it's imperative that we apply to the Green Paper report and request that some of our, or actually most of our residents who are affected in this area be compensated for in a way through grants or through what other mechanisms that will be achieved through the Green Paper report, to compensate them for the added expense that they have to do to glaze their homes to make them noise-proof.
Thank you, Councillor Sypek. Councillor Bedio, would you like to speak?
Yes, thanks, Mayor. Look, Councillor Sypek, you're on fire. This is another brilliant nom from yourself and something that I support. I agree with the officer's feedback that it's obviously something that's quite a significant cost implication for us to run this grant scheme. However, I believe it's something that the federal government really needs to step in and look at, considering that airports are under their jurisdiction, and it's not something that is unheard of. London Heathrow Airport has a policy for supporting both community buildings and residential buildings with subsidies towards noise insulation, and that goes for schools, colleges, community halls, etc. As well. And I think that's something that, particularly with the upcoming changes into the runway, it's something that really needs to be considered for the Airport West portion of our municipality. So I think this is a really great idea, Councillor Sypek, and I'm keen to follow this one to see how this progresses to the next step with the white paper or the green paper?
Green.
The green paper. And hopefully I'll keep my eye out for this one to see if there's any response from the federal government.
Thank you, Councillor Bedio. Would any other councillor like to speak? Councillor Nation.
Thanks, Mayor, and I also concur. Well done, Councillor Sypek, for bringing this to the attention of council. And I think, as you've expressed many times, this is a rather unique situation for these residents, because you could argue, unlike say where I used to live in Essendon North, like that airport has been around a considerable long period of time, the Essendon Airport, 100 years, and a lot of the housing stock around it was added after the establishment of the airport. East Keilor obviously weren't impacted by Tullamarine until 1971 or so, when a lot of your residents and constituents would have already been there for at least 10, 15 years. And so the airport came after the suburb, but then also now the overlay is changing as well, and the operations are substantially changing. So I don't think that it is unfair on a level of government stumping up to support those residents who are going to be considerably affected. The report does detail the overall quantum, which is considerable, and I think that is something that maybe as a council we can advocate on. And Mayor, you can speak to the relevant minister, I think Catherine King, to say, hey, this is the impact that this is going to have on particularly our East Keilor Airport West residents, and this is how much it would cost to remediate those issues. What are you going to do about it? And I think having even just those details in the report, and Councillor Sypek, your first point obviously notes the report, so it's on record now, is hopefully going to mean that we can advocate for those residents so their way of life is not impacted. Thanks, Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Nation. Would any other councillor like to speak? If not, I will put that to the vote. All those in favour? And that's carried unanimously. Item 9.7 is response to notice of motion number 2022/21, options of dog parks in Moonee Ponds and Moonee Ponds Activity Centre, parentheses MPAC. Councillors, do I have a motion? Councillor Isa.
Thanks, Mayor. I'd like to move an alternative motion. I'll just read it. Thanks. That Council resolves to A, note the findings of the assessment of sites for future dog parks in Moonee Ponds to inform further feasibility and planning for grant funding or partnership opportunities for dog facilities in Moonee Ponds. B, include funding for a feasibility study for a fenced dog-only area in central Moonee Ponds, preferably within MPAC, either at existing or new open spaces in the 2023 to 24 budget, subject to budget processes.
Thank you, Councillor Isa. And just for the benefit of governance, in central Moonee Ponds, preferably
Within MPAC.
within MPAC.
Thanks, sorry.
Sorry, governance, those three words to be after
Yeah.
central Moonee Ponds. Yes. Can I just get you to give me a nod, Councillor Isa, whether that's correct, what you've moved?
Yep.
Thank you. Is there a seconder? Councillor Bedio. Councillor Isa, would you like to speak to the motion?
Thanks, Mayor. The attachment to this report contains some really important and useful data, and that is that Moonee Ponds, it has one of our highest rates of ownership of dogs, but that it also has an undersupply of open spaces. In fact, it's got pretty much none except for Queen's Park in the centre, and then some peripheral spaces in Bent Street and then Fanny Reserve. So MPAC itself has no open space. Yet simultaneously, the population of Moonee Ponds has exploded, particularly within MPAC. And currently there's an estimated 14,000 people and 6,000 dwellings, but by 2040 this is forecast to increase almost double to 25,000 people and double the dwellings to 12,000 dwellings. So we've got an explosive population within an area with no open space, which is contrary, of course, to what we know is good for people and what we know is good for pet ownership. And we also know that pet ownership is a positive in terms of people's health and wellbeing. So with no open space provision in Moonee Ponds Activity Centre and with Queen's Park being nearby but a dogs on leash area, it's no surprise that I've had a number of requests from people to please provide somewhere for dogs to be exercised and have a little run around within central Moonee Ponds and MPAC. And I really appreciate officers putting together this report, but I'm very keen that we take the next step in this. The report says that in order to act further, we need a feasibility study. The recommendations on page 12 of the attachment say down the bottom that council should continue to seek opportunities to deliver new open spaces within MPAC that could incorporate dog facilities through partnerships, property acquisition or developer contribution of open space parcels. So I'm really keen to act on that. Thanks.
Thank you, Councillor Isa. Councillor Bedio, would you like to speak to the motion?
Thank you, Mayor, through you. This is something that is really important to me as well, as someone who lives in Moonee Ponds and with a dog, particularly a dog that doesn't do very well with a leash. We have to frequent Cliff Whitworth to give Cosmo a bit of a run around. And it's something that constituents have come to me quite often with respect to the lack of open space in MPAC, but importantly the lack of ability in the area to let dogs or their pets exercise. And that's really important when you consider that a lot of the population lives in small apartments, so the pets aren't able to run around freely as they would in, I guess, your more suburban setting, which makes it even more important that we have these spaces so that we can keep our pets happy and healthy in Moonee Ponds. And as the report shows, dog ownership in Moonee Ponds is one of the highest in the municipality. On this as well, I think we do need to really look at investing in our open space in Moonee Ponds. compared to most other suburbs within the municipality. It's got an underinvestment from the open space portfolio and bucket of money, and I think we really should be looking at putting money towards as much open space in Moonee Ponds as we can. Obviously, the Moonee Valley Racecourse is opening up, and hopefully that infield will have some activation opportunities for recreational use, and potentially that could include a dog park. We're not sure yet, but that would be fantastic. So there's something I really support. Looking forward to getting some more feedback on. Also want to put out there that I think Shooter Street would be really cool as an open space. I know that's probably thinking a little bit bigger picture, but if you can imagine a nice underground car park, rooftop garden, potentially an off-leash dog park, that would be amazing. Obviously quite expensive, but definitely something that I think we should look at. It's flagged in MPAC in our planning scheme as potential open space in the future. So obviously I'll leave that to officers, but looking forward to reading the report.
Thank you, Councillor Bedio. Would any other councillor like to speak on this motion? Councillor Hodgson.
Thanks, Mayor. Thanks, Councillor Isa. Look, as a fellow Moonee Ponds resident and dog owner, but with a dog who does pretty well off-leash, but not in fenced areas, funnily enough, Fairbairn Park is our go-to. But there's a lot of really good options for consideration in the report. Some of the options considered could be Ormond Park or Maribyrnong Park during not time at the sports facilities. But I think the beauty of a feasibility study is that we can look at all the pros and cons, look at all the options, and look at all of providing options for everyone that may need them. I know we've recently had issues with people walking dogs off-leash in on-leash areas, and this might also address some of those concerns where Moonee Ponds residents might be using areas that are designated on-leash and taking their dogs off. So we want to make sure that Queen's Park stays safe for all the park users there, and that dog owners have options for them to exercise their dogs safely off-leash. So really happy to support this one. Thanks.
Thank you, Councillor Hodgson. Would any other councillor like to speak to the motion? Councillor Nation.
Thanks, Mayor. And look, I absolutely agree with the contents of the report and the motion to look at introducing a dog park in one of our most populous suburbs. Maybe Essendon's a little bit larger than Moonee Ponds, but Moonee Ponds is only growing in size, and it has a great high dog ownership numbers in terms of the rest of the suburbs in our city. And I think something that City of Melbourne did through their feasibility work looking at dog parks in the City of Melbourne is that not every dog park has to be the same. Like we envisage a lot of the time dog parks like Cliff Whitworth or the one up here, Elf Pierce up in Strathmore as a relatively expansive piece of land, dogs off lead, run around. The City of Melbourne, what they found in a lot of their research is in terms of their dog ownership, it was predominantly smaller dogs that people obviously living in high density living might necessarily have a large dog, but they had small dogs. So their concept of dog parks that they've rolled out, I think they've got 8 or 10 now in the City of Melbourne, including one they've just rolled out, I think down near the base of Australia 108. It's only the size of a basketball court. But it does give that respite for dogs that live in apartments to go off leash. They also, before that, in 2021, repurposed a little bit of a larger size, but just a little bit larger than a basketball court under Kingsway in a disused portion of land, working with Vic Roads to repurpose that as a South Bank dog park. And so I think that when we're visualising, and hopefully the feasibility study picks up at what a dog park can be, we don't necessarily have to look at those huge expanses or limited huge expanses of land in Moonee Ponds, but it might be the corner of a parking lot, it might be an old tennis court, it might be a small portion of land in MPAC that we need to purchase, or we slice off from existing council land. I think it's the diversity of dog park sizes I think is really important. So those living in Moonee Ponds, It might be a smaller one, size of a basketball court or half court you can take the dog down to, or you might jump in the car to go to a larger one at Elf Pierce or Cliff Whitworth, or a nice greyhound off-leash dog park, wherever that may be. I just wanted to close with a point of clarification through the CEO, if that's possible. In terms of dog park funding, during the 2022 election, the local member announced $400,000 for a dog park in Flemington. Have we received that money, or has there been any further traction on that?
Thank you for your point of clarification, Councillor Nation. I think it may be beyond the scope of the report, but I will ask the CEO whether she has anything to add, or her officers.
I don't remember seeing anything yet, but I could be wrong, so I need to follow up. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Nation. Is there anything to add in your remaining 9 seconds?
Yes. No, not really. I just wanted to drain the clock. Nothing more to add.
Thank you, Councillor Nation. Would any other councillor like to speak to this report? Councillor Sypek.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. Over the Easter break, I went to one of my relatives' home to celebrate Easter Sunday. And after a large meal, you usually go sit in the lounge and watch TV and sort of doze off a little bit. But my cousin said, let's go for a walk, and he wanted to take his dog to a off-leash park. And I went, okay, terrific, let's go for a walk. And we went for a walk, and we went down to the local soccer club, would you believe it? And the soccer club has got signage all around the fencing. So it was like a natural barrier for dogs to run around, and there were no gates, and the gates were only opened, you know, when the games were on, and then they closed the gates. So the actual park was fully enclosed with these signs. And I thought, how good is this? How good is this? They're utilising a piece of land, and they're actually using the 1 metre high advertising fencing as a natural barrier to keep the dogs in. And the dogs running around enjoying themselves, and I just thought, maybe we should bring this to Moonee Valley and let's try it out. Let's try it out on one of our, you know, football ovals or soccer pitches or hockey pitches, whatever. It might be an idea, who knows? But I'm willing to explore it. So, like I said, it's always good to go into other municipalities and see what they've got and bring it back to Moonee Valley.
Thank you, Councillor Sypek. Would any other councillor like to speak to this report? Councillor Byrne.
Thank you, Mayor, and thank you for the interest in the debate that's been around the chamber. I think Councillor Nation pointed out a few things that I probably haven't thought of in such depth, so it's probably swayed me a little bit. But you know, I was fortunate enough to work in Moonee Ponds for about 8 years, maybe a bit longer than that. And it's a beautiful suburb in our municipality, and it has a lot of great things going for it, but it has a lot of things that unfortunately aren't going for it, and one of them is open space, and another is a kindergarten, and of course we're talking about a dog park now. And I suppose one of my concerns with this is that if I was advocating for things for Moonee Ponds, would it be for a dog park? And I don't know whether it would be, because I think that more people would get more value out of a non-fenced-in dog park, or more people would get more value out of. Well, I've definitely had more people scream to me saying that they want a kindergarten in Moonee Ponds. And whilst I acknowledge there's you know, different size constraints for all of these things, and which is what Councillor Nation has pointed out, I hope that the report does come back with probably some more of the smaller sites, because if it was one of the larger sites, I actually think that that's probably not where I would be prioritising. And I say this as a dog lover. I'm a dog person, and I can understand why dogs need spaces to run around. But there are options, and I'm not sure also on if you create a dog park, does that encourage more people to have dogs in apartments, and then you need even bigger dog parks, which we won't necessarily be able to cater for. So I think that it raises a few questions, but I am looking forward to seeing what comes back with it. But I suppose I'm still mindful about what I see as probably some high priorities in Moonee Ponds. Yeah, thanks.
Thank you, Councillor Byrne. Councillor Adams, you are the only councillor who has not spoken on this motion. Would you like to?
I wasn't going to, but yeah, just following Councillor Byrne's comments, I think that Moonee Ponds has got a huge population growth, and especially in apartments, and I know and also the highest dog ownership in the municipality. So I would totally support looking for options for dog parks in Moonee Ponds. It's a really, really important outlet for dog owners to be able to go somewhere to take their dogs to socialise with other dogs and run around a little bit. A lot of dogs are left alone in apartments during the day while their owners are at work, and so having somewhere that they can go that's local and within a few minute walk is really, really important, and I don't think we can underestimate that. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Adams. I'll put that to the vote. All those in favour? And that's carried unanimously. We now move on to item 9.8, which is the Governance Report Quarter 1 2023. Councillors, do I have a motion? Councillor Isa.
Move the officer's recommendation, thanks.
Thank you. And a seconder? Councillor Hodgson. Councillor Isa, would you like to speak to the motion?
No, thanks.
Thank you. Councillor Hodgson, would you like to speak to the motion?
Thanks, Mayor. Just to say, from time to time, we report on our informal meetings of councillors as a form of transparency, just to help our community to understand what we're up to when we're not live streaming to your living rooms. Thanks.
Thank you, Councillor Hodgson. Would any other councillor like to speak to this motion? Councillor Nation.
Thanks, Mayor. Community members mightn't have looked through the attachments for 9.8 because it is a very procedural report, but if they did, they would find that the notice of motion that called for an urgent meeting with the relevant minister, Minister Horn, and the local member, Minister Pearson, in regards to the fatality at the Essendon North roundabout, that the only correspondence we have received back is one letter from Minister Pearson, receipt of the letter, no further discussion, and from my understanding, no correspondence from Minister Horn. And at this stage, on Tuesday the 11th of April, there has still been no correspondence. And I do find that somewhat disappointing because we were compelled to write to those ministers via a notice of motion because a Moonee Valley resident died as a result of issues at those roundabouts. And so I'm hopeful that in Minister Horn's case that the letter maybe got lost, the email got lost. I know there was multiple notice of motions contained within the one letter. So I might actually move an amendment.
What is your amendment?
For a Part D, which reads, in regards to the notice of motion correspondence listed above, rewrite to Minister Horn and Minister Pearson, comma, reiterating the content of the original letter, comma, and again calling for an urgent meeting at the Essendon North roundabouts to discuss the recent fatality. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Nation. Is there a seconder? Councillor Bedio. Councillor Nation, would you like to speak to your amendment?
Yeah, thank you. And this report that comes quarterly, I guess, is a good stock take for us as councillors to see what communication has arisen since the passing of notice of motions and subsequent letters. And I guess, in theory, it's in part to ensure any communication that needs to be resent or requests to be remade that are at existing council positions, that we can do that through this report. So, as I stressed in my original comments, this wasn't just a case of writing a letter to advocate for something. This was a council position to call for an on-site meeting to at least give council and the mayor the opportunity to express some serious traffic issues at the Essendon North roundabout. So hopefully fellow councillors can see that we take Minister Horn that potentially she didn't receive that original correspondence because we didn't even get a receipt, and this is our chance to reissue it and hopefully get that meeting to be held. Thanks.
Councillor Bedio, would you like to speak to the amendment?
Thanks, Mayor. Look, I'm happy to support this. Obviously, ministers are quite busy and they have a lot on. However, this is something that's really critical and important for council. It's something that potentially had dire consequences unless it's amended. So I see it's reasonable to send a follow-up just to show the urgency of the matter and that we want to discuss further. Thanks.
Thank you, Councillor Bedio. Would any other councillor like to speak to the amendment? Councillor Isa.
Thanks, Mayor. Look, I won't be supporting the amendment. I think it would be more courteous to just make a phone call and check in that way, and if the letter needs to be reissued, it doesn't need a resolution to do so. You know, I've worked in a number of MPs' offices and there's no need for this sort of process. You can just manage things in more diplomatic ways, I think. Thanks.
Thank you, Councillor Isa. Would any other councillor like to speak? If not, I will put that amendment to the vote. All those in favour? That is Councillor Adams, Councillor Bedio, Councillor Nation, Councillor Byrne, Councillor Sypek. All those against? That is Councillor Hodgson, Councillor Isa and Councillor Tyson. I declare point D carried and to form part of the substantive motion. And we return to Councillor Nation with, I believe, 1 minute left on and 11 seconds. Our governance officer is very on the ball in terms of timekeeping. Councillor Nation.
Thanks, Mayor. Thanks, Mayor. And I'm probably disappointed, Councillor Hodgson, Councillor Tyson, Councillor Isa, you didn't support that. You would have been CC'd into my repeated attempts to try to escalate this matter and even just get a response as to if we'd received letters. There's 5 emails in my outbox trying to get an answer in regards to if we'd even been responded to. It wasn't until this motion came up that we could see that we definitely hadn't been replied to, and so it was a last resort for me because unfortunately I could not get a response as to whether or not Minister Horn had contacted us. So it is sad that it had to come to that I was required to use this motion to get a meeting or at least get answers from our council. But I've had to, and yeah, it just disappoints me you didn't support it, to be honest, but that's the way it is. Thanks.
Thank you, Councillor Nation. Would any other councillor like to speak on the motion? Councillor Sypek.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. And look, I see both sides of the argument here, where a phone call would be suffice enough to make contact with it. But the difference that I see with that is when you ring up, you just get an officer or a clerk or a secretary that will answer your call and they'll pass on the message. But if you actually write a letter, you have to address it to the minister, and it actually has to cross the minister's desk. Now, that's all semantics, right? The biggest concern here is lives were lost. Lives were lost in Moonee Valley. And all we want is just a response, an acknowledgement of our letters. Hopefully a fix. But lives were lost.
Thank you, Councillor Sypek, and I will just confer with governance for 1 second. I'll ask if any other councillors would like to speak. Councillor Isa.
Yeah, look, I don't know if I've
Councillor
spoken.
Isa, you moved
Moved the motion.
to the motion. So I might just, for councillors' sake, moved Councillor Isa, seconded Councillor Hodgson, Councillor Nation and Councillor Sypek have spoken. Would any other councillors like to speak? Councillor Byrne.
Thanks, Mayor. And I thought that Councillor Sypek might have picked up on this one when he spoke, because he's been very passionate about it in the chamber before. But I think one thing that it does point out again is that sometimes us writing letters doesn't necessarily have the effect of what we hope it does, especially when I think it's Councillor Nation mentioned there were 3 particular notices of motion within the one letter. And whether we need to be looking at advocating in a different way, or ensuring that if we haven't received a response from our letter within a week, we do put in a courtesy call if that is a better approach than another letter. I'm not exactly sure, but I do think that it shows that our process at the moment isn't quite right, and that we probably should fine-tune it to be able to get a better outcome for our municipality, which is what I'm hearing generally around the chamber. It's just about how we actually get there. So, thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Byrne. Would any other councillor like to speak? I have not heard dissent on this report. Could I just clarify from councillors that that's their recollection as well? In that case, I'll put that to the vote. All those in favour? And that's carried unanimously. We now move on to item 10, notices of motion, and we have none listed on the agenda tonight, so we therefore move on to item 11, urgent business. Do we have any urgent business? Councillor Isa.
I'd like to move a matter of urgent business that I can just title acceptance of petition.
Thank you, Councillor Isa. I'll call on Councillor Isa to speak to why this matter should be considered an item of urgent business.
Does it need to be seconded?
No.
Okay.
Sorry, to clarify, it will need to be seconded, but...
Yep,
Oh,
understood.
yeah. Thanks.
So just prior to the meeting commencing, we realised that the governance rules have an awkward clause whereby we couldn't move a motion about a petition to accept the petition in its anomalous form unless we moved it as an urgent item, and we only realised that just before the meeting commenced. The petition itself makes requests about budget. The officers are in the process of putting together a final budget recommendation to councillors, hence the timing. and I don't believe it's an operational matter because it's something that is required to be by resolution of council.
Thank you, Councillor Isa. And before I request a seconder, does any councillor have a conflict of interest in the urgent business to be considered? Thank you. Now, do I have a seconder that the item be considered urgent? Councillor Bedio. Councillor Isa, would you like to present your urgent item?
Sorry, Mayor.
Actually, sorry, Councillor Isa. I see there's been an issue with my notes. I'll put to the vote that this item be considered urgent.
Sorry, Mayor, don't we get to debate this, no?
I'll have to confer with governance. Councillor Byrne. Thank you, Councillor Byrne. I will ask if any councillors would like to speak to this item being considered urgent. Councillor Byrne. Sorry, Councillor Byrne, you're on mute.
So sorry. Urgent business in the governance rules, what number it is, please, as a point of clarification?
Sorry, what's your point of clarification?
Where is it in the governance rules?
Where's what?
Urgent business.
Urgent business is 25 in the governance rules.
Thank you. Thanks. Mayor, I'm happy to speak now, if that's okay.
Please continue.
Thank you. So 25.2.2 is confined to a matter that cannot safely or conveniently be deferred until next council meeting or the item involves, safely or conveniently be deferred to the next council meeting. I'm not sure whether it might have budget implications to actually tick that box or not. I think that it's the start of April, the budget's not, or I don't believe it's coming to us next meeting. Happy to stand corrected on that. So I'm not really sure it actually meets the idea of it being urgent according to our governance rules. But I'm also mindful that I'm obviously online tonight and I missed the discussion that this would potentially be urgent business. So if there's something I'm missed, happy to stand corrected.
Thank you, Councillor Byrne. Would any other councillor like to speak to why this is urgent? Councillor Hodgson.
Thanks, Mayor. Look, just to, in an effort to respond to Councillor Byrne's question, or point forward in debate, it's happened around the chamber a little bit lately that councillors haven't felt adequately prepared for making informed decisions. So it would be my opinion that allowing officers the more than 1 week or whatever the case would be if we were to defer this to the next council meeting, wouldn't allow them sufficient time to provide us with the information we'd require to consider this come budget time, passing the draft budget. And it's my view that putting out a draft budget that is well considered and signals to the community the intention of council is probably one of the most important things that we do as a council.
Thank you, Councillor Hodgson. Would any other councillor like to speak as to why this be considered urgent business? Councillor Nation.
Can I just ask a point of clarification? Because you can't actually say what the motion is before we vote if it's urgent, I think. Are we talking about a budget submission or just the petition that was lodged in the petitions?
This is in reference to the petition that was discussed in the item 3, I believe, at the start of the report, regarding the, I think it was 2 + 2 = 4.
And okay, thank you. And a follow-up. So in item 6, the CEO didn't receive that petition formally.
So the reason why this is being considered urgent business is that councillors received advice that because the petition didn't specify, the e-petition didn't specify in the correct format, that there would need to be an urgent motion of council to allow it.
So as a further follow-up, wasn't my recollection of item 6 was Councillor Isa did table the petition and the petitions were receipted by the CEO?
No. No.
So a further point of clarification, did the petition, the previous petition that was moved in 6.1, did that have an accompanying motion from Councillor Adams?
Councillor Adams' petition was received under the governance rule.
But there was no motion?
There aren't motions in petitions.
So why would Councillor Isa need a motion for hers?
There's been advice provided under the governance rules that because it didn't meet the criteria of an e-petition to be allowed under the governance rules, that a motion would be required to accept it.
Thank you. May I have my time?
Yes.
Look, so, okay, when I feel like this is a legacy of our previous governance rules when you needed to move a motion to accompany a petition, because regardless of what that governance rule says about petitions, if Councillor Adams has tabled one without a motion and it's been received, and Councillor Isa has moved one without a motion and it's been read and received, the receipt via the CEO is usually via a motion that existed before these governance rules. So personally, I think it's unfair on the petitioners that this would come via urgent business because, as Councillor Byrne put, you could quite well argue that that under the specifications of what's urgent business, that it doesn't meet that criteria. And even as Councillor Hodgson has said, it might have budget implications. You could argue, well, that's what our budget submissions are for, so it would form one of those submissions. So where a petition would actually hit the threshold to be urgent business, it may be challenging, and therefore a motion actually at 6.2 when it was tabled, and that motion to receive it, I would have thought would be more practical, particularly because it does say that it can only be received with a resolution. Then potentially at 6.2 it should have come with a resolution. I'm just really challenged by the fact that I don't want to say no to this petition and future petitions that come in an online form, and I think it was discussed via email during the week. I think Councillor Bedio raised it. That is the nature of how petitions are done now, and we don't want to discourage that because particularly of the demographic and the younger age that would be more inclined to sign an online petition than to write a letter or sign a clipboard. So I think this has put us in a really vexed position that I don't want to not follow the governance rules, but I guess in this case, I'm happy, in my view, to support the receipt of it, contrary to what I think the governance rules say, because I don't think that it should be put on Councillor Isa or the petitioners that this has to be raised in urgent business, because it doesn't do justice to either trying to do what is ultimately a good cause and just tabling a petition on behalf of the community.
Thank you, Councillor Nation. Would any other councillor like to speak as to why this item be considered urgent business? Councillor Nation, can I clarify whether you were speaking for or against the motion? Or unsure?
For. Well, I was speaking against, but I'm voting for it.
I'll ask Councillor Isa whether she would like a right of reply. Please continue.
Look, it is, our governance rules aren't great, and we do have an opportunity, hopefully coming up, to fix what I think is a really awkward issue created in the latest, when the governance rules were amended, I think it was last year. I didn't actually realise this change had been made, that we couldn't move any motions on petitions. And when I realised it had been changed, immediately realised that it was not a change for the better. And here's a case in point as to why it's not a good. And so I do agree, Councillor Nation, with you, Councillor Nation, that this isn't an ideal situation, and I very much look forward to fixing it in the governance rules review. That said, if we can just work, we do have to work within the governance rules that we do have, and if I could just ask the indulgence of colleagues to allow us to find a workable solution within these rules to allow this petition to be received. Thanks.
Thank you, Councillor Isa. I will now put to the vote that the item be considered urgent. All those in favour? And that is Councillor Adams, Councillor Bedio, Councillor Hodgson, Isa, Nation, Sypek, Tyson, and all those against, Councillor Byrne. I declare that motion carried, and I will now, that this matter has been accepted, I will ask Councillor Isa for you to put your motion in relation to...
Motion from the beginning of
I might allow...
I can make it up, it's fine.
I might call a 4-minute adjournment to allow Councillor Isa to finalise the wording of her motion. So we will return at 9:14. Welcome back to the council meeting where we are considering urgent business, and I now ask Councillor Isa, having had time to finalise her motion, to please move it.
Thanks, Mayor. I'd like to move that Council resolves to receive the petition titled 2 officers plus $2 million equals 4 Our Future as tabled in section 6 in the format presented to Council without email addresses, and refer the petition to the CEO for consideration.
Thank you, Councillor Isa. Is there a seconder? Councillor Hodgson. Councillor Isa, would you like to speak to the motion?
No need, thanks.
Thank you. Councillor Hodgson? No? Would any councillor like to speak to the item? If not, I'll put that to the vote. All those in favour? And that is carried unanimously. Item 12 is confidential reports, and we have one listed on the agenda this evening. Item 12.1 is response to notice of motion number 2023/05.
Sorry, Mayor, I'm going to step out at this point as I declared a material conflict of interest earlier tonight, so I'll leave the meeting. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Byrne. To clarify, this is a procedural motion to close the meeting to the public, but
I don't want to. Thanks. Bye.
thank you, Councillor Byrne. Item 12.1 is response to notice of motion number 2023/05, property matters, parentheses, Keilor East. Item 12.1 contains confidential information relating to A, council business information, being information that would prejudice council's position in commercial negotiations if prematurely released, and C, land use planning information, being information that if prematurely released is likely to encourage speculation in land values as it relates to property acquisition. Councillors, I need a mover and seconder that council resolves to close the meeting to the public pursuant to section 66(2) of the Local Government Act 2020 to consider the aforementioned item. Councillors, do I have a mover? Councillor Sypek, and a seconder, Councillor Adams. I'll put that to the vote. All those in favour? And that is carried unanimously. This is now where we say goodnight to the members of the public who have joined us on the live stream. Thank you for joining us this evening, and please join us again soon. Thank you.